Hi, it's Colleen Schmidt from Divination Counseling Service here today to present the new moon of April 27th, 2025, which occurs at 3:53 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So I have once again done a chart for Washington, but I want to try to really just dwell on, just as I've been doing recently, only those things that affect everybody in the world, regardless of where you live, so that you can take this on a more personal level rather than a political one. So with that said, as we look at this chart, the first thing you want to note is that the sun and the moon are at 7 degrees, 40, well, it's debatable, 46 or 47 minutes. I'm just going to say one software says this, one software says that. So we've got our new moon around 46, 47 minutes. So 7 degrees, 47, 46 minutes of Taurus. And that happens to fall about less than 3 degrees, maybe 2 something degrees of the ninth house. So it's as though you're in the 8th house, the house of, I always want to say sex, drugs, and rock and roll, but it's actually taxes, inheritances. It is sex, it is death, it is all of those things. But it's interesting, when I first looked at this, which was like a week ago, and I thought to myself, well, that's really interesting that we're literally like 2 degrees and 15 minutes outside of that cusp. And it's as though there's something going on that it could deal with combined resources, or the resources of an organization, or the resources that are combined. And then you see, as we progress into May, and I'll find out when I do the next full moon and new moon, but it does appear that it's on the cusp of change, because the 9th house is the house of change. A lot of times it's change because of things we know. So because we know this, we can change that. Okay, so it's one of those kinds of things. Other things that are rather interesting in this chart, and I'll go through this stuff rather quickly, is the combination of Venus and Saturn. And they are, I'm going to say, they're less than a degree apart, because it's really close to, it's 28, 29, and 27, 31. So when I say less than a degree, I'm talking about like it's, 50 some minutes. So in essence, they're really kind of connected. Need we say more? And it's interesting because that's watching your money in a lot of cases, but it's also, as Venus is exalted in Pisces, Saturn not so much, but you get this sense that we're watching money, but it's interesting because it's in the 7th house. So it also makes you question what is happening even within our relationships. Are we beginning to separate from certain fractions of our life for whatever reason? And it could have to do with value systems. Okay. Lots of people are going through this. Okay. So I'm trying to explain this the best I can. I personally am going through it. I'm watching my daughter go through it, where it's like you come to a place where you have to evaluate your relationships, and you have to say to yourself, do they share the same value system that you do? Do they look at life a little bit similar, or is it different than you do? And it can cause separations. Okay, so there's a lot going on there. The other thing that's always a concern in the Saturn-Venus issue is also not only the limitations on money and limitations within our friendships, but you have to look at it also in terms of social life. So it's not just your significant others I'm referring to here. I'm referring to anyone that you would be social with. Are you, first of all, let's look, if we go back to the ingress chart, which happened, I know I did one, so that is something that takes place in January, and it literally lasts until June, maybe even beyond. Some people think that that chart can last 9 months. Well, in that 9 months, we had Henderson. And Henderson is an asteroid of antisocial behaviors, okay? I personally can tell you that I don't think overall people are as social as they maybe were before all these planets started getting crazy. Let's just call it that. I'm not even going to talk about all the external factors that have influenced or have brought it. It's always the planets. So if we're talking about a political influence, doesn't matter. It's always the planets, and I think that that's something for us to bear in mind. Okay, not a good thing, but it is what it is. I also want to point out that also in that 7th house, now realize that we have Venus and Saturn in the 7th house, and we have Neptune also in the 7th house. Now, Mercury's right on that cusp. Here we go. By 1 degree in 1 minute, that 1 degree is huge at these house configurations. And I can tell you that with Mercury, what we might be looking for is not just news. And it's interesting because there is bonding there with that Mercury, which could be bonding with younger siblings or bonding with siblings in general. Because of Sappho. And it is 11:7 to 11:21, so they're really, really close. And Sappho is a bonding, and it's more of a platonic bonding. But I do see that it is going to bring certain people together. So as I see some people separating, I see other combinations connecting. And it's like people want to be with people now who are like-minded. The concept of let's agree to disagree doesn't seem to work well right now because of disinformation, disillusion, deception period, which is Neptune. And though we might be compassionate for those people, there's still a Venus-Saturn, okay? And I can say this from my own life, that, hey, I wish you well. I wish you really, really well. But I don't think I'm going to spend my Saturday nights hanging out with you. And I think that that's something, or my, whatever the social thing is, okay? And I think that that's going on a lot. And it might be because you're not feeling that you can really connect Venus-Saturn with those people. So instead, maybe moving to people who you feel Mercury, similar ideals, people that think similarly to the way that you do. And again, this is really the Washington chart, but Venus and Saturn are still in conjunction, and Neptune is still not far away. So I don't care what chart you're looking at, but it would be really interesting to look at those factors because Saturn and Venus are getting ready to go into Aries, literally as I speak and as this chart happens. I mean, we're so close. And Neptune has gone there. So you're going from this big conglomerate of planets in Pisces, the woe is me, type energy, to, all right, now I'm fighting mad. And so it goes into Aries. So you can understand why our allegiances are shifting, okay, with regards to our social life, our friends, and even our partners, okay? There could also be, as the only 2 degrees, about 2 degrees, a little more than 2 degrees between the node and Saturn, which is older, more mature connections. So it could be older in that I've known you for 100 years, or it could be older in that an older person, toward a younger person. Okay, so I wanted to talk about those things because they're really important. And then there's other things that I'll be talking about on here in this chart as well, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. As far as I didn't want to spend any real time on the angles, but I will tell you that since America, Washington, the capital of USA, is the type of situation where we sneeze and the rest of the world gets a cold. So just a little briefing here. There's a lot of pressure on weaknesses. Okay, this is all going on behind the scenes. There's a lot of pressure because of weaknesses, and the attitude that we're justified in just doing it is causing a lot of pressure, and it's becoming a weakness, and it's also becoming very self-destructive. So, and because I live on the East Coast, not far from DC either, I can tell you that that is even a concern in my personal life in that respect too, that it'd be really important right now to watch in the environment that people are not doing things that are self-destructive. You really want people to stay healthy. You don't want people to be consumed by what's going on. And my big thing is spend time in the green. You know, well, I live in PA, so being in the green this time of year is pretty easy. Smell the trees, even though I'll be sneezing, but I still do it anyway. The other thing that I want to point out about this chart, which is super duper important, for me, this would be, because I'm like 1559 where I live. This is 1515. So this chart works for me, is what I'm trying to say, and for anybody on the East Coast. The Clotho, and the reason why I do want to go through this, is that Clotho is right the first asteroid in that first house, and it is retrograde, but it's talking about beginnings, where we may not see where these beginnings are going. We may not even know that there are beginnings, but there are. We can feel them. If you take your intuition and just take a moment, you will feel these new beginnings, okay? I will tell you, by the same token, there's a lot of resistance. So what is the opposite? What is it that's happening from the DC chart is a lot of resistance and anger. Toro, there's, you know, it literally is bullying, okay? And so you have this hanging around, and the other thing is that Sirius is there, and we're going to talk about Sirius because it actually is also in the Sun-Moon axis. Okay, so if those asteroids are actually falling in, I think it is the Sun-Moon axis, or is it the Aries point? Nope, I believe, and I can tell you in 2 minutes on my notes, it actually is, yeah. It's 2247 and this is 2338. It just fell right within minutes. It just fell in within minutes to the Sun-Moon axis. And we'll be talking about that because I think that's going to be important in terms of what's coming. Okay. And notice that it's in the 7th house. Which is the partnerships or also open enemies. I do see victory there with an abundance of victory, I might add. So it's interesting, but it also is referring to shortages of money because of abundance of money. So, you know, one of the things and again, we could talk about this in relationship to your own charts. Like, what would that mean? You know, it's like we're tight with money, but here is money. It could be anything like if you do have money, you're really, really hoarding it or you're putting it aside. But it could also be that the reason you don't have money is because either money was owed out to somebody, a lot of money, and the victory is it's paid off. Or it could be something else that's going on that caused that. And again, it's all in Pisces. It's all in Pisces. So let's get going on this. So that's the chart itself. But where I want to spend some time, obviously, well, let's do this first. just, I wanted to do what I wanted, have all these different plans. Okay, so here, what I am going to look at with you, second page of notes, is I want to look at the aspects, hoping that you can see these because I never know what pops up. No, it's not there. So I'm going to read these off to you because the program itself only puts up one thing, okay? And I've got two things up right now, so it won't pick it up. But we're looking at the axis of the sun and the moon. But before I get to the actual axis on a dial, I want to talk about its relationships to planets in the traditional, what's referred to as a pizza pie chart. And the sun and moon make some very strange configurations this time. And I'm going to be really honest with you. There's a lot of work involved. A lot of work. And the reason why I say that is because it starts off with, there's not a lot, there's like no trines, okay? There's no conjunctions. So these are all working, difficult aspects. So we have a square to Pluto. In your own connections, look for power plays and manipulations. Just look for it, okay? Because of the square to Pluto, all right? It also squares Mars. So there's going to be aggression and there's going to be anger. And, you know, it's funny, and I didn't see this, but Pluto and Mars are in opposition. And I'm going to be honest with you, that is some pretty freaking nasty energy. And, you know, it can, I'm using my words from my teacher, Gary Christian, but it's just basically what I'm seeing here is that he says depression. I think it's frustration. I think it's even more than depression. And the reason why I feel that way more so is because the location of these planets. Like, for example, you're talking about Pluto's in Aquarius and Mars is in Leo. And I think that's bigger than depression. Yes, I think it can make people depressed, but realize we're talking fixed energy. In astrology, your fixed energy is your doers. So that's action, okay? And Pluto is transformation. So I'm thinking, and Volcanus is right there, right with that Leo Mars, okay? So you got 320 and 408, okay? So again, less than a degree, here we go. And what that is, or what that represents, and by the way, it could come as a surprise because here's one at 258, Pandora. Surprise! There's a lot of pressure that causes anger and aggression that could ultimately lead to transformation. Remember I said, this new moon, this comes with a lot of work. So we'll be working. You'll be working. This could be coming through your own ability in the DC area, my area, the East Coast, where that pressure could be coming from associates and friends. Remember, be careful who you are with. And it's transformation of self. All of what's going on, I believe, is transforming us. Is it transforming us individually? In this East Coast chart, it is. That you would have to look at in your personal location. Where is 3 degrees of Pluto in your chart? And then that Mars would be in the opposite position. Something to look out for. So Mars and Pluto, ugly, 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 both are squaring the sun and the moon. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, they're wide squares. I don't know that I would go that far out. However, I like to always talk about what the software has brought up, because if you're a regular traditional astrologer, you're probably using a lot larger orbs than I am. Okay. The other thing that's going on here is Vesta. Now, Vesta is one of, like Apollon, okay, so here's Vesta, and here's Apollon. Apollon is far more directly involved at 6 degrees with everything I just named, including the sun and the moon, than Vesta is at 13 degrees. But let's talk about that for a minute. First of all, Vesta's your goals. So people could be very goal-oriented, but remember the Saturn-Venus is going on, and people can be very distant and cold to one another. In Pennsylvania, we just call that minding our own business. But in other states, especially in southern states, I think that would go differently, go down a lot differently. So bear that in mind. The opposition to Apollon is, and Apollon being in the DC chart in the second house of money, opposite combined money, we got a problem, Houston, okay? Because Apollon is like business, more than one connection, more than one source of money. But remember, the pressure to transform is somehow related to business, to more than one, to the idea of expansion, which, by the way, is retrograde. Okay, so in other words, doesn't look good. Besides the fact that as Apollon and more than one means that when you're under a lot of pressure to transform, it will be in more than one arena, in more than one way. And as I had said earlier about the Venus-Saturn, that what happens is that the house 2 of money is also the house of our ethics, morals. Okay, and one of my issues, as I discern through my friendships, are that you would think more like me in terms of ideology, that your ideology and my ideology would be similar in what we think is worthwhile. Okay, house 2. Okay, so that's your second house. Now, it would depend upon where you lived, where that would fall, but I'm going to tell you right now, the concept of more than one is going to put a lot of pressure on action and transformation. And I don't care where you live, okay? The other thing that it opposes is Poseidon, but Poseidon, in my opinion, now you're getting far out, okay? So I'm not going to say too much about it, other than the fact that it is still just outside, 19 minutes outside of the Aries point configurations. And, look out for propaganda. Look out for information that tries to divide us. There's that's an interesting concept because of Vesta, the distance, and then you have Poseidon. But it also is the conclave going on for the Catholics. It is in the 3rd house of communications for DC, so that could play out in a couple of different ways, but could also be news at work. And, it's in the 3rd house, retrograde, so once again, I don't think it's going to be the greatest news. All right? I did talk about how it squared Vulcan. The pressure is on. The pressure. Also with Vulcanus, there's a sense of destiny. That, you know what? This had to happen. Darn it. We had to go through this. Darn it. Okay, so there is an element of that. And the other, especially since it's direct, the other thing is, I was going to say one more thing about that. Just there. Oh yeah, I know. There in the asteroids, there's also karma, and we'll get to that. Okay. The last thing I want to talk about is an inconjunct and a sesquitrot, if I'm saying it correctly, which is another form of an inconjunct, is the nodes. Okay, so when you look at the nodes, which are, I knew where they were, but then you get to here we go. They also are in late Pisces and late Virgo. So you've got the 7th and 1st house crap going on. And again, the 1st house is oppression. just like timing is off, things aren't fitting right. No wonder we're all so antisocial. I mean, there's so much here, right there, that causes a little bit of problem. And the only thing I can tell you is that it's all about destiny, and it's really, really pushing us to change. Some of this stuff will come by surprise, but it's really forcing us as people to transform. It's that shift, I think, into higher consciousness. So that's something to think of. Urania is square all this by less than a degree. And I do want to throw this, like 57 minutes. And I do want to throw that in there only because we're sitting here listening to astrology. And I, who am a big podcast person, I probably listen to more podcasts than music by far. And I've been really drifting myself, and I am an astrologer who doesn't always listen to other astrology, but lately, for some reason, I've been really drawn to listening to other astrology, even if it's more traditional astrologers, and I'm a Uranian and an asteroid astrologer, although I'm finding there are other people that do, particularly the asteroids, which is really exciting. But it's, the square is, again, Uranus, of Urania, trying to put a logical spin on some of this stuff is just so emotional. So, and it's emotional, why, you say? Because the moon's involved. And that is our emotional selves, okay? Also, not to be weird or anything, but the moon in Taurus can be a moon of, just literally questioning those things. It is a moon that questions things, like such as, the transformation, the pressure. Why do I feel this way? I feel so angry. I feel so aggressive. And again, I think the moon in Taurus, ruled by Venus, we are looking at relationships and thinking, is that causing me to feel that way? And where was that? Oh, where was that? No, I did blow something here. I want to talk about it. Toro is there. I think I said Sappho. Oh, no, here it is. Okay, I was like, where am I? It's with Mercury. Okay, so the news of those you bond with. So again, that pressure to change. Okay, so with our connections, there's all your node stuff. So I wanted to throw that in there. So now I'm going to switch, because I've been yakking here. And I also want to really stress that, and you can tell it's working. Let's start here. Look at that crisscross, okay? We'll talk about that in a minute. I do want to stress today, very important, I am not going outside of a degree orb. I'm not saying that you couldn't. I'm saying that since I'm trying to teach about asteroids, I don't want to go outside of it for the simple reason I only want to show you what's most direct, but also since I'm going to assume that a great percentage of you are somewhat new to asteroids, that I don't want to overwhelm the chart with the asteroids. And one of the reasons why I say that is because this is one of the least Aries points that I've ever had with asteroids, but I do want to talk about it, okay, because I think it's really important. But let's talk about this first, okay? The other thing that I like to do when I'm doing charts, and I do a lot of it for clients, is I literally go through these midpoints, okay, because they're really important in Uranian astrology. So again, just kind of showcasing my background of astrology here a little bit. But those notes, okay, are here. Too many notes. Okay, so let's talk about this Aries point. All right, one of the things, let's start here. This Jupiter and the Cupido, and it talks about being happily related to things that are in public or your connections to the public, okay? And then underneath it, we have the Kronos Ascendant, which is like being of public service or bringing general problems to the public awareness. And problems that you want to bring up, but also connections to the superior, and it might be even problems connected to the superior, the leader, the government, whatever. I take that to be more protests. I'm a protester. I looked at that and said, okay, get those signs ready, because to me that's a lot of what I'm seeing in all of this, okay? It's also talking about, as we get down to Pluto, Uranus, I'm coming to the bottom now, the general public must adapt to sudden change. I think there's going to be a lot of that starting already. I think it's already started. I just think we got whisper of what those changes might be, and I think we're going to be moving into an arena where they are more likely to happen, okay? And it's also talking about being indignant of something. General excitement that can lead to rebellion and uproar. Again, I think this is really talking about protests. And for the moment, I think the protests will be okay, but I don't think as we get into May that'll be true. For reasons I will not go into on this chart, but I can tell you that we will be hearing about it, okay? The other axis I wanted to look at, and again, I'm not doing full chart. I'm only doing these two critical points, and look at how this is the cirrus. So here we go. Okay, so basically what we're talking about here is, and this doesn't have as many that I would look up. I don't look up, you know, the Ecuadorian ascendant or the trans-Pluto to Mercury, although it does tell us that on one hand there's going to be a lot of news or strange news or news that affects us. But here, we'll start with that Mercury Adamitas here, which is like people who sit a lot, okay? And it also talks about an end of emotion or a standstill, okay? That's that Mercury Adamitas. So it's referring to that. And it goes, let's see, places where we are welcome is where it starts. Aries ascendant to the sun and to the moon, but to the sun is where I start. And it's also people being known to many people. And again, I go back to gatherings of people, such as protests. And not everyone's a protester. Believe me, I protest, and believe me when I tell you, they all look like me, white hair and the whole nine. When you say people who sit much, that might be our crowd. So it is an older group of people that have been doing a lot of it, which is just perfect in my opinion. It's something that we know how to do when we're old and not get upset, you know. You can't get crazy. It also refers to, as you get to the moon and ascendant Aries, it refers to females who appear in public. And by the way, did I mention that I look like the protester? Yeah. We're older females. Now, I'm not going to say there's not males there. There were. But again, you're talking about a smaller group, and they are generally older. Okay. Now, as I stay with the Aries point, let's go back to the Aries point. And just for a minute, let's talk about Ceres, because it's really important, and she's in that axis of the sun. That is food, it's parents, so it's either parents to children, children to parents, so it could be related to something regarding children, or parenting, or our parents, particularly as my age group is dealing with older parents. So it could deal with that. But the thing I'm most concerned with is food. Okay, and you're all like, what? Remember how hard those aspects were to the sun and moon, the Vulcanus, the Mars, okay. What happens when the shelves are empty? That's all I'm going to say. And I think, and I'm speaking more to the United States on that. I think if you're in any other part of the country, you might have problems. But I think since it's the Washington chart, it's really going to have some problems. Okay, so I find that to be disconcerting. That was a very big, when I saw it, because that's nurturing. It's food, it's nurturing, it's it's parenting. It's all those things. So as I come back here to the Aries point, and I got to go back. Oh, that's enough. Too many notes. Here we go. So I want to start up here because you're listening to this video. Okay? Cassandra. She's the prophet nobody listens to. I have her right on my midheaven. So I think that's hilarious. She's running right now about 40 minutes away from Liliputina, which I don't have an asteroid for that. But Liliputina is telling us that it's a little too little and a little too late. So it might be advice that you're seeking or getting, but it might be a little too little and a little too late. Okay? Unfortunately. Up there with that is Abundantia. Okay? And I'm probably going to get to that at another point. It's not Aries. It's in another sign. But Abundantia also tells us that it could be an abundance of advice that that we will or will not listen to, or that is just a little too little and a little too late. So it's an abundance of stuff that is coming, and I think an abundance of stuff is coming. So Abundantia right at the Aries point. Oh, that's all I'm going to say. Okay. So, and it's just interesting. This is really an interesting configuration in the chart, as it is. And this is Chronos, and these are decisions, and this is being off and alone. So it's decisions made by people or the authority figures that either make you go off on your own, or it has something to do about other people going off on their own. I don't have to tell you we have a problem with this government and the way they handle immigration. And I'm just going to say it like that. It's disgusting, and it could hit the Aries Point news. In other words, because of the way they're handling and doing things, no matter where you are in the world, you're going to be aware of it. Okay, so the other two things I want to talk about here. Well, no, I'm going to hold off on the one because it's related to the sun. Ditto. Okay, what does ditto mean? Well, ditto means like doing one thing like you did something else. Okay, so one of the reasons why the ditto might be so important in the Aries point cycle is because of that Abundantia. So then you have to say to yourself, well, how much of this have I already heard? Sure, we got a lot of abundance of stuff going on, but how much of it is repeated? Okay, how much are they repeating things? How much are they repeating information that's not true, okay, about something ending? I don't even have to go into that because you already know what I'm talking about, I'm assuming, and that would be the wars. Anyway, which is really interesting. Here's something that is also showing up here, and this, I want you all, it's about the health of a house. Okay, well, in politics, we have a lot of unwell people, don't we? That's all I'm going to say. But think about things that relate to house, okay, like your hearing. That's what the health of your hearing, because house is related to your ears. So, you want to think about the health of the house, or is somebody in a household ill? Okay, is there a baby that's got whooping cough or measles? I mean, this could go a million ways, guys, okay? So thinking about the health of a house, watch your ears, because to me that would be like really key, is that I gotta, especially with allergies, I've noticed, okay? And allergies are rampant, so in this part of the world anyway. And that's also Neptune, guys. Just realize that's Neptune. Now, as we move to Eurydice, Eurydice means things that we're dependent on, okay, or people that are dependent on us. That also shows up here. So remember that advice and that abundance and a little too little and a little too late, and health issues, and ditto, they all go together. And then you have this Eurydice, okay? And Eurydice is that dependency. What are you dependent on? That could be causing, okay? So think about that. What are we dependent on? This is an interesting, I got the last couple sets, except for the very last one. No, actually I did the last one. Abundantia is actually at 29 degrees, 55 minutes of Pisces. So it's 5 minutes off the Aries point. So it's 5 minutes from conjuncting Cassandra and Liliputina. I mean, no, it's actually less than, it's 15 minutes from Cassandra, and so it's you get the drift, okay? It's conjuncting all of those things. Now, the last two sections that I want to talk about will also come in big clumps. Another reason why I didn't want to go outside of a degree orb, I didn't have to. Here's a clump: Panacea, Libitina, Admetus the asteroid. Okay. So you say, what is that, Colleen? Okay. Well, what it is Panacea represents solving problems. So we want to solve problems. Libitina is tears. We have a lot of tears because something is stuck, firm, immovable, and Admetus is an obstacle, and so here we have some kind of obstacle. So Panacea, you could think of something being stopped, but with Libitina, there's still tears. Okay, so Admetus it's an obstacle, but it's also somebody remaining firm. Okay, and I do see tears there. And so, I don't know that and it's only 7 minutes difference between Panacea, Libitina, and then only another 6 minutes till you have Admetus, the asteroid. So there is some kind of rock in our way, and I don't know that the rock is the solution. It could be, but if the blockages can be a solution for the moment, I guess, but it's still bringing a lot of tears. The next grouping, these are conjunction groupings, okay? So that one occurred over here at that 2230 mark, okay? This one is occurring back up here with our Cassandra, with our Liliputina, with our Abundantia. We have Lie, Savo, Diana, which is retro, we'll talk about that, and Niobe. Okay. And I think that there's a lot of lies, okay, that, and it's wondering, you're saving the lies, or are you gathering information on lies? Saving. There's a saving there. And a Diana. Now, Diana's retrograde, generally meaning nature, animals, but it's hunter-prey. It's also hunting out. It's also hounding, okay? And it's retrograde, so I'm going to go with hunter, hunting, and hounding, okay? And Niobe, which is pride. Could people be lying to save their pride? It's a thought. It's a thought. Are we discovering lies and saving up and hunting for more? To point out, I don't know. But think about those in terms of an Aries point, because everything I just spoke about is the world in general. Okay, so let me move to the very last section before I talk everybody's head off here. Okay. I'm going now to the Sun-Moon axis, all right? So just to kind of point out where that is in terms of the, and by the way, Even though Neptune is 55 minutes of Aries, it's still in the Aries point. So I should have mentioned that right along with it. That deception, that lack of clarity, the compassion and empathy that we're feeling, particularly for those people that have been screwed. Yeah, yeah, you catch my drift, okay? Neptune is surely a part of this. Gonna find out it's not just Neptune. It's, there is in here, let me just see if I can find it. There is Poseidon the asteroid. I could have sworn I was going to talk about that, but yet I'm not seeing it on my notes. I'm going to let it go for now. There is an asteroid Poseidon as well. Let's look at this before I get too hung up. First of all, the first thing I want to talk about that's in here as we go into this sun axis, okay? So let me get it to the exact point. All right, so it's somewhere between 6 and 7 between the two astrologies. Here we go with Ceres and Astrea. So they're in here. So let's talk about that. Then you have your second axis, which is literally right there. Okay? It's about 17 degrees. So wait a minute. Look what's hanging out here. Oh yeah, that's right. It is out, but not far enough. Kronos is in there. So authority figures, governments, leaders are definitely a part of the sun-moon axis in this particular new moon. Okay, so realize that, some of the pressure, some of the stuff that's going on, it could relate to governments. Okay, and politics. Okay, that was something else I was going to bring up and I didn't in the Aries point. It's, again, one of those things that's slightly out. It's down in here. And then we have another one. Where was it? I think it was, in any event, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it, but there are two. Here it is. See, it's close to this kind of stuff. I think it was here, rather, it was not Pallas, it was Minerva, sorry. Anyway, just moving on with this, we're going to be doing a lot of, like, in our minds, we're going to be wondering about a lot. I could tell you that just from what we're doing with our relationships and our connections and our, the people that we relate to on a one-to-one basis. So there's a lot of wondering and me, just thinking about things. There's also this idea here of overreactions. Okay, so we might be witnessing overreactions. Gee, this authority figure never does that. Oh my God. Of course, we'll probably see it in politics. But it doesn't matter. Wherever you are in the world, you're going to see overreactions. And possibly by authority figures. The thing I kept alluding to but never talked about was, I like to talk about this. The sun and the moon conjunct. Hold on to that for a second. Doo-doo. Crap. Okay, I'm going to call it as I see it. So what is it about our connections that are crap? Sun-moon connections, right? Sun-moon. All right, it's the connections that are, also reflect us. But there's crap in the sun-moon axis. There's crap with this leader asteroid. Great asteroid, right? Messenger is also in here. So we got, not only did I give you that whole thing on Mercury, but we have news, messenger, in the sun-moon axis. We also have to watch for our health and the health of others. Already talked about it in the Aries point. Our health is a factor in this next period of time. We're also hack, which could be looking up things on the computer, looking for shortcuts, but it's shortcuts in general. It's a hack, okay? Now, with people working in our government systems, and again, this would relate more to the United States, I'm concerned that hack falls in here because we have people literally hacking our personal information. Okay? Xinhua tells us that there's going to be some kind of withdrawal. Okay, some kind of backing away, maybe temporarily. And sometimes when you think of this asteroid, you think about places of business where they actually literally close the business so that they can redecorate or do some construction to rebuild it. So there's a withdrawal for purposes of rebuilding. It also highlights the Asian parts of the world, China, for DC's chart. So it's that Asian, southeastern type of energy, and I do believe that we in the world, in the sun and moon axis, and that's a connection, okay, not going well for the United States at the moment, although, you know, I hate to say this, but yay, China. What can I tell you? You know that bully asteroid that was over there on the descendant? You know, I'm really thinking that one of the reasons they're not dealing is because somebody's acting like a bully. So there you have it. And what's interesting underneath here is the idea of addictions and drugs. Now, there could be problems with drugs because of tariffs. All right, that's a thing, okay, real thing. That's medications, especially heart medicines, as Valentine is there. So again, you know, the foolishness of this cabinet is that they're so ignorant that they don't realize that none of this stuff comes from our country, that we have a global community. And I believe karma's coming their way. And this is where I talked about destiny and now karma, okay? And the other thing I want to talk about is, remember that this Chronos is also in the sun-moon axis by about 17 minutes. It's a little bit out by 17 minutes, I should say, but we have a cabinet of drug addicts. We have, and I would say for entertainment purposes only, but I'm going to be really honest here. This is not entertainment. This is education. Okay, and it's a well-known fact that some of the people in running this government have drug problems. The last time this particular person was in office, they had like party bowls of drugs. I swear to God. Okay, so again, not something I'm making up. Not something that's literally made the news, okay? So our news might be really shut down right now. We don't really, but I think it's always been shut down. That's just my opinion. But, you know, that has already made it out into the news. It refers to websites. It refers to social media in the sun-moon axis. And that is retrograde. So it makes me wonder, what is it about the internet and certain websites, okay? And Apollonia is there, so there's a lot of them. So we, you know, you have Apollonia as one of, which is an asteroid, as one of the asteroids that are in. Now, remember, we already talked about Apollon, the asteroid, which fell in the second house across from the sun and moon. And you can see in a 90-degree dial, they're not really that far apart, okay? But now we're getting it again, all right? We're getting it again. And to me, when I do professional work, that's a highlighted moment when I start writing somebody's chart, okay, to see something multiple times. The other thing that's in here, and these are all going to be retrograde for a minute, okay? Apollonia is retrograde, so it's not going to act like normal. It's going to be more than one, but not quite normal. Same thing with the websites. Lax. Lax is lack. We are going to lack, all right? That's why I was very worried about that Ceres. Because Ceres and Lax are in the same. Now, it is a retrograde Lax. It won't be as dramatic, but there will be Lax in Ceres, in the food. It's also talking about Lima, which is running with Alicia and Astrea. So I want to talk about those as a group because I think, again, this new moon that I'm doing is not a pretty new moon. It's kind of a difficult one, and I know I've said that before. So Alicia is humiliating. Humiliating. Lima is nice. So if you're nice, it's humiliating. Or people who are nice could be humiliating. So in other words, it's a nice lax Lima, Alicia, and Astrea. There's no easy answers, no easy solutions. It's not going to go quick. It is retrograde. It's ongoing. It's picked up from somewhere else and it's ongoing, and it is humiliating. And trying to be nice isn't going to help either the humiliation or the lack. Okay? But I do think people will try to be nice as they go through this. Some will. Okay, some will just feel that pressure and that anger. It depends on how you're dealing with that Volcanus Mars opposite Pluto. That's what that's going to depend on. Okay. Now, as I come to these next and final asteroids in the Sun-Moon axis, we're going to go, now they're not retrograde, now these are direct. Barlow, somebody who talks incessantly. Well, we have a Kronos that talks incessantly, but look for that. Look for authority figures, leaders who talk incessantly. It also refers to, there's Poseidon asteroid. I knew it was in here. Okay. With Messenger and Poseidon, the asteroid, please don't believe everything you hear. And it also is disinformation that's still spreading. And the way that they're trying to gaslight us into thinking that Zelensky's at fault in the war with Ukraine. No, he's not. Okay, but get ready. Somebody's going to talk incessantly, and they're going to be talking BS. If I were you, and I know I'm going to be doing this, I would be using this messenger and this Poseidon, the asteroid, as a way to kind of do more spiritual work, to look up more spiritual writings, to work with my spirit, to work with that part of myself, and do that because I think a lot of people are. And that's a beautiful way to use this energy, and maybe listen to people who on podcasts are talking incessantly. It just, whatever works, right? Urania is there. I did talk briefly about trying to make logic out of this, that as we go through this process, we have to be logical. But Persephone is also pointing out, as we go through this change of our bonding, of who's our associates are, our counters are, we're going to be at times knowing that this is a journey that we have to take on our own. That there is an alone quality to this whole thing that we all have to deal with. And I sometimes feel that even when you're surrounded by like-minded people, there can still be a sense of aloneness as you sort things out in your own consciousness. And then I would end with Ceres, which we've already talked about, with the food, with the nurturing, with all of it. So I'm going to leave it there. I've been talking for a long time, and I hope that you got something out of this. And most importantly, please take care of yourself, as we're going through some really difficult times that have never been ever seen before. 70,000 years they went back in history. No conglomeration of planets has been like what we're seeing right now. And so it's not you, it's everything. And it is karmic and it is destiny. So the best thing that I can advise you to do is, as I said, work on your spirit. Work on what makes you happy. For me, taking an e-bike ride out on a country road is an incredibly wonderful experience and wipes my mind of all the garbage. Kayaking on a river can do that. I do that as well. So my feeling is, do something for yourself This is a great time for people to work on themselves and study. Better yourself. Work on your second house. That's what I would advise. Until we meet again, I wish you all only happy readings.